NBA All-Stars have been announced. The full reserves, I should say, have been announced. The starters were announced prior, but here we go. East All-Stars. So the starting lineups we already knew. Cade Cunningham, of course, in there, making his first All-Star start. Second All-Star game, we got Jalen Brunson of the Knicks, Tyrese Maxey of the Sixers, Jaylen Brown Celtics, and Giannis from the Bucks. The reserves, we've got Jalen Duren making his first All-Star game with the Pistons. We also got a couple of other first-time All-Stars as well. Norman Powell, which is kind of interesting for the Heat. I think they probably did that for world purposes. And then Jalen Johnson of the Hawks. He is also a first-time All-Star. Otherwise, we got Donovan Mitchell making his 7th All-Star game with the Cavs. We got Scotty Barnes, Pascal Siakam, and Karl Anthony Towns of the Knicks. So there's your East All-Stars. West All-Stars, the starters, you got Steph Curry, FTA from the Thunder, Luka Doncic, Lakers, Jokic, Nuggets, and Wemby from the Spurs. The bench players from the West. Some other first-time All-Stars. You got Jamal Murray for the Nuggets, which, I mean, can an argument be made that he should have made an All-Star game previously? I mean, probably. There was one year specifically that there was a injury reserve. There was, some players injured, and I think they picked Mike Conley. Yes, a washed Mike Conley to make his first All-Star game at that time. And Jamal Murray at that time obviously had a far superior season to Mike Conley. So that was pretty crazy. Other than that, he's dealt with some injuries. Some of these seasons that he was probably All-Star worthy, so that obviously impacted his selection. But finally, Jamal Murray is not only healthy, but he's actually been playing consistently at an All-Star level. So he makes his first All-Star game. You also got Anthony Edwards of the Timberwolves, Devin Booker, Suns, LeBron, we'll talk about that, Kevin Durant, and then other first-time All-Stars, Denny Avdia of the Blazers, and then Chet Holmgren of OKC. Now, again, the big thing is they're going to have 3 All-Star teams this year. They're going to have 2 United States teams of 8 players each, and then 1 world team of 8 players. And it's going to be using these players, and they may add All-Stars if they need to get to that amount. So looking here, I'm going to count up the world, just looking at the world players, scrolling through this list right here. So you've got, just 4 world players just from the West starters. You got Wembanyama, Jokic, Doncic, and FTA. You got 4 right there. You got 1 Giannis from the East stars. You got 5. You got 2 more from the West reserves, and then you got a couple from the East reserves. You got Siakam, Norman Powell, and then Karl Anthony Towns. Norman Powell and Karl Anthony Towns, they have as dual. They have U.S. and then also, another country, and they're Dominican Republic, for example, for Karl Anthony Towns. So you got 8 right there, and they could probably build the U.S. roster. I don't even know if they need to add anybody. I don't know. Will I even watch the All-Star game? No, because I don't care for the All-Star game. I care about who makes the All-Star team. I just don't care about the All-Star game because I've said it time and time again in the past. The NBA All-Star game is a joke. Let's be honest. All-Star games in all sports are just a travesty at this point. It was kind of the NBA All-Star game was what started it. Really the last 15 years. I think maybe the late 2000s, probably the last time I really cared about the All-Star game. But then early 2010s and onward, especially the last 5 years, it's just a joke. Players blatantly don't try. Adam Silver trying different things to make the players care, and they just don't. Because at the end of the day, players trying, that's what's holding the All-Star game back. But we've seen it kind of infecting other sports as well. NHL All-Star game before last year, of course, with the Four Nations face-off was phenomenal. They got to make that a mainstay. Hopefully that stay. I mean, and playing for your country in other sports, like the NHL specifically, that rivalry between the U.S. and Canada, I mean, it's phenomenal. But before that, the NHL All-Star Game was going downhill as well. And even they started to do something like the NBA as well, where they started to do these different teams and these tournaments, and it just awful. And then, of course, the Pro Bowl and NFL is just awful. And again, with this year's, Shedeur Sanders making the All-Star Game for the AFC is just a travesty. I get it, he was named as an injury replacement, but you know who would have been a much better injury replacement, who had a much better season on a much better team as well? Trevor Lawrence. But nope. They picked Shedeur Sanders. By the way, I like to look at the Pro Football Reference. I like to use that website for, looking at different stats. I like to use their different sports websites as well for baseball and hockey and basketball as well. But if you sort, kind of the primary, if you sort all the individual quarterback stats and you pretty much pick the main quarterback of the season for each team, so you go all 32 teams, just one quarterback from each team. And if you choose Shedeur Sanders being the guy for Cleveland, basically, statistically, nearly every statistical category of all 32 teams, he is dead last. This guy legitimately was perhaps the worst starting quarterback in the NFL last season, Shedeur Sanders. Yes, as much as we clowned on 9 J.J. McCarthy with the Vikings, Shedeur Sanders was even worse. And the fact that this guy was named to the Pro Bowl, I mean, that's was anybody going to care about watching any of the Pro Bowl stuff? No. But kind of like I mentioned with the All-Star Game with the NBA. I care about who makes the All-Star Game. I don't care about watching the All-Star Game. So, yeah, that basically once they named Shedeur Sanders to the Pro Bowl for the AFC, I mean, that whole thing is dead on arrival. Just a travesty. The only All-Star Game I will say that is mostly still intact is the MLB All-Star Game. I don't like the idea of having at least one representative per team, like all 30 MLB teams. You have to have at least one player that makes it. I don't like that because you are going to get players that don't deserve it making the All-Star games, and then obviously as a result you're going to be taking spots away from other more deserving players who happen to be on a team with multiple All-Stars. And we've even seen that in the NHL as well. The NHL has been doing that as well. Like every team has to have at least one All-Star, which I don't like that idea either. So, anyways, back to the NBA All-Star Game. Again, really happy. I mean, that was pretty obvious. That was going to be an absolute travesty if Jalen Duren was not named to an All-Star. Because, again, the season that this guy's put on, I would argue both Cade Cunningham and Jalen Duren have not only had all-star caliber seasons, but all NBA caliber seasons. Cade Cunningham, I've mentioned he should probably be scratching the surface of maybe a top 5 conversation for the MVP award, the way that he's played this season. This guy should be all NBA first or second team. And then I would argue Jalen Duren, this guy has to be at least a third team All-NBA guy. I mean, this guy's been spectacular. So it's good to see that he gets rewarded with that first All-Star game. Now, in terms of snubs, I have no idea how, looking out west, Kawhi Leonard, how this guy does not make the All-Star game. Because I mentioned LeBron in that list. Not to say that LeBron shouldn't be in the All-Star game. I mean, you already know my feelings on LeBron James. I think his numbers are inflated. I think he is way overrated, especially during his entire Lakers tenure. He doesn't play any defense. He load manages on court. That's how he does it. That's how he's been able to play this long. But regardless, even looking at his numbers, are they all-star caliber numbers? I would say so, but if anything, he's like the last guy in. But if you have a guy like Kawhi Leonard, which Kawhi Leonard, by the way, he's actually having a career scoring season. It's actually the most points he's scored in a season so far per game. 27.6 points per game. That's the highest mark of his career. He's as efficient as ever as well. So, Kawhi Leonard. Yeah, how is this guy not an all-star? You could even make the case James Harden, even his teammate. He probably had a case to make an all-star game as well. His overall numbers across the board are a little bit better than LeBron James as well. And even beyond that, I know this guy's hurt. And he's not even going to be playing in the all-star game. He could always be named and then, be replaced later as an injury replacement. For example, Giannis, probably not going to be in the all-star game, but he was named. But Jimmy Butler, I think Jimmy Butler, that's another snub for an all-star game as well. I'll take all three of those players, Butler, Kawhi, or Harden. I'll take all three of those guys on the West all-star game over LeBron James. And you know why they did it, just because of his name and his history. But, yeah, in my opinion, I think it's what you do this season. And LeBron James, yeah, sure. Some of his numbers may seem all-star worthy, but especially over Kawhi Leonard, I just don't understand that. I don't understand that. Out east, I don't really have any complaints, really. Obviously, for me, Norman Powell for the Heat, that's maybe a little questionable, but a couple guys that probably could have made it out east. Michael Porter Jr., as I mentioned, he's like the only good player on the Brooklyn Nets, so he's put up some pretty good numbers. He could have potentially made it. And then LaMelo Ball for the Charlotte Hornets. I think the Hornets have honestly been kind of underrated this season, which is weird to say. The Hornets are obviously not really high up there in the standings. As a matter of fact, they're not even in the play-in. But I think the Hornets, especially in the last month or so, they've been actually playing some pretty good basketball, as weird as it is to think. They're actually on a 6-game winning streak right now. Won 8 of their last 10 games. So I think LaMelo Ball could have been considered for the All-Star game as well. But again, those All-Star snubs, if you want to make the case, not as egregious as the West All-Star snubs, especially for Kawhi Leonard. How? I don't understand how this guy didn't make the All-Star game. But, again, all that matters, for all intents and purposes of the program, the Pistons got their 2 guys in that deserved making the All-Star game with Cade Cunningham and Jalen Duren. And for my Denver Nuggets, Jamal Murray finally makes the All-Star game, which is nice to see. And, of course, get a chance to see him against the Detroit Pistons at Little Caesars Arena tomorrow.
If you missed today's installment of On the Docket, podcast it at foxsports1019.com or wherever you get your podcasts. Be sure to tune in live weekdays at noon on Jackson's Fox Sports 101.9 FM.